Wendy's new breakfast 2 for $3 Biggie Bundles lets you choose from your fave 4, including a sausage or egg and cheese biscuit, small seasoned potatoes, or medium hot coffee. Limited time only during breakfast hours. U.S. price and participation may vary. Not valid in a combo. Single item at regular price.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron James said his son Bronny will play for USC this season. The 19-year-old freshman is still waiting to be cleared to resume basketball duties. That decision will come from doctors, LeBron, and LeBron's wife, Savannah. Bronny suffered a cardiac arrest on July 24th during a workout on the USC campus. He was diagnosed with a congenital heart defect. LeBron said Bronny underwent a successful surgery. He gave no timetable on when Bronny will be allowed to practice with the team. USC started practice on September 25th. Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp got the okay to practice this week. Kupp has been out since August to treat a hamstring injury. He's eligible to come off injured reserve this week. If healthy and in shape, Kupp could be in the lineup for Sunday's game against Philadelphia at SoFi. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
On Monday, October 9th, don't miss the KBLA Talk 1580 exclusive. The tape. 1 year later.
Y'all were coming for us.
Yeah, but Tavis, that's not in my heart. I wasn't coming for anyone like that. I apologize, but that was not me. That's not in my heart. And like I said a few moments ago, I have a solid, demonstrable record of shared power that's real and concrete. That can't be misinterpreted.
Join Tavis Smiley and an all-star panel of political insiders, influencers, and journalists for a look back at the crisis that shook LA City Hall when 4 Latino leaders were caught on tape making racist, demeaning, and derogatory statements about black people and other fellow citizens. On Monday, October 9th, exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580, The Tape. 1 year later. We'll broadcast live an afternoon drive from 5 to 7 p.m. with an immediate encore presentation from 7 to 9 p.m. When all was said and done, was more said than done. 1 year later. Are there fractures in LA's black-brown political partnership? And where do we go from here? Don't miss The Tape. 1 year later. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. Monday, October 9th. Live from 5 to 7 p.m. with an immediate encore presentation from 7 to 9 p.m. We've got a lot to talk about.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space. And when you're out there without care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough.
I'm Tavis Smiley, and I am thrilled to have you in with us in this hour today. Why are more and more African-American families turning to homeschooling for their children? Homeschooling used to be largely dominated by white families, but Census Bureau stats show that African-Americans account for the largest surge in recent years of families who are choosing to homeschool their children. Trey Stewart of Homegrown Homeschools joins us now to explore this phenomenon and why it's growing so exponentially amongst African-American families. Trey, good to have you on Tavis Smiley. How are you today?
I am doing great. Glad to be here.
It's an honor to have you on. Thank you for the time. Glad we have an hour. There's a lot I want to sort of unpack, I think, in this hour. Let me just start with the big broad question, which is why more and more African-American families are turning to homeschooling. Why are they choosing that as an option?
Ooh, there's a lot of responses to that one, I think.
We got an hour. Take your time. Go for it.
Okay. I mean, I definitely think that the standard just in general in the school system has certainly been on the decline over many years now. Mm-hmm. I believe that money has taken precedence over our children and their futures. I believe that children are disciplined, our children specifically are disciplined much harder than children of other races, that where their learning is not happening, right? They're being over-tested and underlearned. The schools are not safe anymore. There's We're sending our kids basically to an enemy to teach them things, and they're trying to whitewash our history now. Our kids are away from us for 7 to 8 hours out of a day, being taught by someone with a totally different belief system than we have. I mean, I could go on and on and on about the things that are just not working anymore in the school system, especially for people of color.
No, so I'm glad you did that. I'm glad I asked that question. I'm glad you answered, because now you set the frame for the whole hour. See how that works?
Okay.
I ask one question, and you give me the frame for the whole hour. So I've done this for a few years. I know how this works, and so let me now start to interrogate the answer to that question, because that is the penultimate question. Why are more black folk turning to homeschooling? You giving me, and I was writing as fast as I could, you giving me about 10 answers, and I'm going to spend the rest of the hour interrogating those answers. Let's start with the first thing that you told me about why African-American families are turning to homeschooling, that public education is on the decline. That alone we could spend an hour just sort of unpacking that by itself for the next 60 minutes. But when you say public education is on the decline, give me more. Unpack that particular statement for me.
Okay, absolutely. I worked in the public school system for a few years as a secretary, one to a behavioral specialist in the elementary setting, and then also to the special education administrator in a high school setting. I was able to see the behind the scenes in how the system works in the way of, let's just take dress code. Right. I remember when I was in school so many years ago, there was a dress code. We couldn't have our shorts or our skirts above our knees. Your hair could only be a certain length. You couldn't have earrings or piercing, tattoos, all these different kind of things. There was a standard. The standard has just been on the decline for so many years that now we have students that are at school literally in their pajamas. We have students in school dressed like they just left the club. And even though there's a handbook that gives direction as to how we are to dress, the teachers, the principals, people are not enforcing it, because to them it's just more important that they're there, because bodies in the seats are money. Yeah. So they're choosing their fight.
Yeah, I'm gonna come to the money. I heard that argument too. I'm gonna come to that. We're gonna, trust me, we're gonna unpack all those answers you just gave me. You think I'm playing? I'm not. We're gonna go through every one of them one at a time in this hour. But to those, let me play devil's advocate right quick. For those who are listening who would respond to you, Trey, by saying that the relaxation of these dress codes allows these young folk to have their own freedom, their freedom of expression. And we live in a country where we're always talking about freedoms. What's wrong with young people having the freedom to express themselves in their attire?
I believe and I can only speak for my house. I believe that there's a standard that should be set, that when we walk out into the world, we are representing our home, we are representing our belief system, we are representing ourselves. And there's a certain level of dignity that should come with that. I don't think that our children thinking that it's okay to leave the house in things that they slept in is equivalent to being out in the workforce or being out into real life. I mean, you can't go on a job wearing your slippers and a bonnet or wearing your pajamas that you had on the night before. It's just not a good look. And we're teaching our children in the school system to lower that standard. And I think they're losing themselves in it.
Well, I received that. I asked Trey Stewart to start this conversation, in case you've just tuned in, why more and more African-American families are turning to homeschooling for their children. The Census Bureau shows that black folk are accounting for the biggest surge, the largest surge in recent years of families choosing to homeschool their children. I asked her why. She gave me 10 answers. I've only unpacked one of them. We're going to do the other 9 when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfected like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Dearly, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bussin', truckin'. Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range on a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with SCHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience, temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
KBLA Talk 1580 stands for Unity and Healing. African Focus Incorporated is a nonprofit organization based in California that focuses on the growth and well-being of Africans all around the world. Their mission is to promote the well-being of people of African descent through knowledge and appreciation of one another by building a bridge of love and understanding. African Focus Incorporated strives for cultural, educational, and economic growth. They're the organization behind the African Family Induction Ceremony, African Goodwill Awards, African Focus Trailblazer Tours, African Dance Competition, and Showcase Los Angeles, Family Day, Good News Windows Microfinance Project, and more. To volunteer, travel with African Focus, or to attend one of their community building events, please call 310-676-7730. That's 310-676-7300. Or visit AfricanFocus.org. This is a diaspora-wide community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
So, Trey Stewart, when you, in answer to my question about why more and more black families are choosing to homeschool their children, when you said to me that money matters more than they're receiving a high-quality education, tell me about the money piece. I think what you're pointing to is that there are dollars that school districts get based on the number of persons in these classrooms. Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dollar signs are attached to the seats. So if your child's not in the school, they're losing money. So why fight a dress code? They're there, right? The kids are present. So the dress code's not as important anymore. Other things are not as important anymore as long as they're there to get that money. And that's really unfortunate because in that our children are being lost.
Yep. Let me do the flip side of this conversation about money before I run down the rest of the list that you gave me of the responses for why, in your mind, and given your experience at homegrown homeschools in Texas specifically, black families are choosing to homeschool their kids more and more. But the flip side of this money conversation is this. I hear your point about the fact that there are dollar signs attached to the seats, but I am curious as to what the costs are, since we're talking about money, of homeschooling your children. What are the costs associated with that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely going to be a cost, but we can diminish those costs by being smart in how we choose to do things. I would never suggest to go out and buy a whole bunch of curriculum that costs thousands of dollars. There are sacrifices that you have to make in order to do this, whether you are single or you are a single income family trying to homeschool multiple children. All of those things are going to factor into the cost. But if you are smart about how you do things and you use the free online sites and websites and worksheets that are available, there's so much material out there that you can find that's at low cost or even free that aids in you to homeschool. And then as well, if you join in with other people, like a co-op or something like that, then you can share your resources, and that cuts down the cost of homeschooling as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm not being tongue in cheek here. I'm asking this question for a specific reason. When we talk about homeschooling our children, that suggests to me that somebody has to be at home homeschooling the children, right? And so if you're a black family and you need that income, somebody's got to go to work to pay the bills. Right. Who stays at home to homeschool the children?
Well, you can do it in several ways. It could be the mother or the father. I mean, I guess you would depend on who is making the most of the income. Mm-hmm. And then there are sacrifices that need to be made. There's definitely prioritizing and maybe cutting back of certain things. If you're living well beyond your means, you may need to kind of change some things around and do some budgeting to figure out how that's going to work. People invest in tutors, or they have other members of their family who chip in and help in that area. If you are working still, even if you stay working, if there's both parents go to work, you mm-hmm. can get your support system to kick in and help you in ways of doing the homeschooling. Homeschooling doesn't mean that we start at 8 o'clock in the morning as it would in public school. Sometimes it can be at 8 o'clock at night. It's whatever works for your particular schedule, your family, your budget. You just have to figure out what works for your home.
Before I get back to interrogating this list, the rest of this list I have in front of me of why more black families are choosing homeschooling, let me just pivot for a second, or pause for a second, and ask you to tell me your personal story of how you got into the homeschooling realm, as it were.
Absolutely. Like I said, I worked in the public school system, and at the time, I have 3 daughters, and they were first grade, third grade, and fifth grade. Mm-hmm. I was in the public school system at that time in high school, and just the way I was seeing things running made me for sure that I knew I wasn't going to let them get to the high school area before I homeschooled. My husband and I had talked about homeschooling even before we had children, but there's those fears that come with that. Am I smart enough to do it? Do I have enough patience to do it? Well, I like my children enough to be with them all day. I mean, this is just the reality of it, right?
Yeah, basic fundamental questions. I ain't mad at you. Go ahead.
Absolutely. But, when I had my children, and I was seeing, we at the time lived in a predominantly Caucasian area where they were maybe 1 or 2 blacks out of the whole class. And I would see different things, my children coming home, and her hair would be one way when she left, and come home and her hair is all down and flying in the wind. And I'm like, what happened? When my friends wanted to touch my hair or play with my hair, my oldest kind of changing and seeming like she wanted to be more Caucasian than she was accepting who she was. Mm-hmm. There were different things with our set of belief systems and how we choose to raise our children and what we believe in spiritually, that there were a lot of contradictions that were being taught in the school. And it just became a situation where I was like, I want to be the influence, me and my husband. We didn't want to send our children to school for 7 or 8 hours out of a day, and someone else's belief system is being impressed upon them. And then they come home and everything we're saying, no, that's not right. That's not what my teacher taught me. Mm-hmm. And so it just became a situation where it was like, we really want to teach our children the truth as we know it, mm-hmm. and make sure that things are not getting lost with them being away from us so much.
Mm-hmm. I get it. Before I get back to this list of all the reasons that you believe that more black families are choosing to homeschool their children, what impact did the pandemic have on these decisions, specifically by black parents? And I ask that in part because of the funny narrative, the funny story, anecdote, I should say, you told a moment ago about whether or not you loved your children enough or liked them enough to spend all day with them. So there are a whole lot of parents in the pandemic who learned a whole lot about themselves, about their children, about their relationship or lack thereof with their children, about how deeply they love their children when they were stuck in the house with them all day during the pandemic. I say that somewhat mm-hmm. tongue-in-cheek, but the serious question is, to what extent do you think the pandemic impacted the decisions that the data now tell us, underscoring the fact that more black families are choosing to homeschool their children?
Right. It did not affect us that much because we had been homeschooling for a few years already prior to the pandemic.
Right.
But I did notice it with a lot of people, like you said, that were really having to now, for the first time, really be with their children and really start learning their children's behaviors and things, maybe that the teacher had been telling them, and starting to see those things. And so when you're not with your kids the majority of the day, it's easy for them to be somewhere else and be taught or whatever, and then they come home and it's the rush, hurry up and do your homework, eat dinner, take a shower, go to bed. You're only with them a few hours. But when you have to turn around and now you're with them all day, every day, like that's a challenge. And it's not for the weak. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people had to really learn their kids and figure out a new dynamic. My husband, that was our biggest change, is my husband was home. And we weren't accustomed to him being home as much as he was, even though we desired it. Mm-hmm. But when he came home, that was an adjustment for us. There was another person that I was feeding. There was another person I was cleaning up after. It was another person that was like in our midst, like that we weren't accustomed to being there all day. And initially it was a struggle, but we found our way and it became a great thing. So to the point that when he went back, we were very regretful of it. But I think a lot of people, they learned some things about each other, some they didn't like and some that they absolutely loved. And I think one of the main things that I hear a lot of homeschool parents say that began homeschooling during the pandemic was they realized that their children weren't learning as much as they thought they were in the school system. Yeah, and they realized their kids were behind.
Yeah, I thought you'd get to that point eventually. When I asked the question, I said, I'm going to see how long it takes her to get to that part of the answer. But I figured it was coming at some point, because I've talked to a lot of parents who felt that same way. When they saw their kids home from school during the pandemic, they learned a lot about what their kids were learning or not learning, the ways they were being engaged or not engaged by their teachers, and so there were a lot of reality checks, if I can put it that way, that parents had to wrestle with during the pandemic. I want to jump back now to this list of your answers to my question at the top of this dialogue about why more black families are in fact choosing homeschooling as an option for their children. We've talked about public education being on the decline as you see it. We've talked about the money, the dollar figures attached to these seats. The third answer to that question you gave me was black discipline. And I've circled this, and I want to get right to this and spend a couple minutes on this because every one of us who pays attention to the news sees these stories far too often. It's debilitating emotionally to see it. But the ways in which black kids are disciplined in schools at a level and in a way that other kids are not disciplined in schools. And that alone, I suspect, is reason enough for some people to choose to homeschool their children, knowing the ways in which their children are being disrespected in the school system when it comes to discipline. So tell me why you put black discipline on your list of reasons why more black families are choosing to homeschool their babies.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, in the position that I sat in, I was seeing that our children were coming to the office way more than anybody else's children, and our kids were the minority in the school. Mm-hmm. But yet I kept seeing the same repeat so-called offenders on a regular. And when I would talk with them, the reasons that they were being sent there were really just a lack of the teacher having control, being able to handle a child who is being made to sit in the seat all day and listen to you. And sometimes everybody's not made to do that. Everybody doesn't learn the same. And so because I can't sit down and learn, now I'm a problem. And so then now I get labeled or I get sent to the office. And it's really unfair because it puts our children in a box, and you have to learn this way. You have to sit this way. You have to do things this way. And if you don't do it, now you're a problem. Mm-hmm. And then they're disciplined for it at a greater rate. I mean, I saw it time and time again, being punished by suspension or being sent to D-Hall all day or, the school to prison pipeline. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was very evident in the school system.
Yep. No, I did a documentary about that years ago for PBS about the School to Prison Pipeline, in-depth documentary I did. So I spent some time really delving into that subject a few years ago, and it was again sort of depressing when you got deeper into it about the ways in which they just maltreat black students. But I remember that documentary quite well. Before I move on, speaking of discipline, so it's one thing to not want to see your kids disciplined unfairly. Or for that matter, uniformly in the school system. But what about the notion of discipline when kids are at home? There's something about being at home that, we can run amok a little bit. We can not pay attention. We can not do what we're supposed to do. We can, be lackadaisical. We are at home after all. So talk to me about the discipline that it requires to homeschool children.
I think the difference from homeschooling discipline versus public school discipline is, first and foremost, I love my child. I love my children. So the way I choose to discipline them or to pay attention to certain behaviors is going to be different from a teacher or a public school system that has overcrowded classrooms and different things like that, and they don't have time to deal with certain things. So it's easier to send them away, send them out of the classroom. If there's a discipline issue in my home, we can sit down, we can talk about it, we can begin to work on that, we can begin to see where is that coming from. And because I love them, I'm going to acquire the patience to figure that out and see what's a different way for us to deal with this. Because a lot of times discipline issues from our children come from they just want attention, whether it's positive or negative.
Right.
Or they just can't, like I said before, they can't sit down and, be in front of somebody, listening to somebody talk over and over and over. I may learn better, playing a game or being able to get up and go on a nature walk. And as a parent, when you're with your child day in and day out, now you get a chance to learn that about your baby and be able to then change the direction of how we're going to administer that discipline. Or maybe it's not even a need of discipline. Maybe now we're just redirecting and you get a better result.
I got 2 minutes left here, and we'll continue this on the other side. But let me just do this right quick. You used a word that I don't want to run so quickly past. I don't want to just streak past this word you invoked a moment ago, and it's the notion of love. And that jumped at me. I gave a speech many years ago, Trey, about. I think the theme was something on this order: whatever happened to the notion of love in our public discourse? Give a whole talk about that, love in our public discourse. Let me just fine-tune this and talk about love, or the absence thereof, in our school systems across this country. I never thought about it in that regard, but it makes a huge difference when the students know they're loved by the teacher. And clearly, if you're the parent and they're the children, they know their mama or daddy loves them. That's got to make a difference all the way around, that there's love at the epicenter of the education process. Am I right? Am I onto something here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference when the child can feel like they're seen and heard, and that their feelings and it matters to them,
I cast no aspersion on teachers. I think teachers are some of the most underrated and disrespected folk in our society. They don't get paid at the level they ought to be paid. So I'm a fan of teachers, and yet I say all the time that it ain't that some of these kids, and I did say ain't, yes, it ain't that some of these kids can't learn. It's that some of these teachers can't teach, number one. And number two, as I've quoted George W. Bush, the only quote from George Bush I ever use. He talked about the soft bigotry of low expectations. There are oftentimes low expectations of black students, and all that said, I'm not convinced that writ large the teachers love black students, and so that's a big difference. Or when children are homeschooled and they know that there's love in the center of what they're being asked to do. I digress on that for now, but that word love just jumped out at me, and I didn't want to run past it so swiftly. When we come forward back to this list of all the answers that Trey gave me initially, why more and more black families are homeschooling their children, I still got 4 or 5 more to unpack, and we'll do it when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. BenefitsCheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
We thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Bob Menendez, New Jersey's senior Democratic senator, could face more charges in his federal bribery case. Prosecutors told a federal judge in New York Monday that more criminal charges could be coming in the next few weeks, even as the judge scheduled jury selection for May 6th. Crime scene photos and videos from the night African-American rapper Tupac Shakur was murdered are among the evidence shown to a grand jury. That's according to KLAS-TV, which said the grand jury was also shown interviews with the suspect, 60-year-old Dwayne Kiki D. Davis, talking about the 1996 murder. Davis was arrested at his home in Henderson, Nevada last Friday and is due in court tomorrow when a trial date may be set. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
South El Monte on the 60 westbound at Peck Road, you've got a brush fire under the freeway. Looks like traffic is stop and go from Hacienda Boulevard. Heading through Culver City, the 405 northbound at Washington Boulevard, a crash involving a car into the center wall. That's now in the center divider. Your stop and go from Florence. Boyle Heights had a crash on the 5 northbound before the 60. That's been cleared. Traffic is stop and go from the 710 freeway.
Seems like COVID's everywhere again, but there's good news from Pfizer. This season's updated COVID-19 shots are now available for ages 6 months and up, and they're designed to better protect against recent variants. Ask your pharmacist or doctor and schedule at vaccines.gov. Sponsored by Pfizer. Wendy's new breakfast 2 for $3 Biggie Bundles lets you choose from your fave 4, including a sausage or egg and cheese biscuit, small seasoned potatoes, or medium hot coffee. Limited time only during breakfast hours. U.S. price and participation may vary. Not valid in a combo. Single item at regular price.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron James said his son Bronny will play for USC this season. The 19-year-old freshman is still waiting to be cleared to resume basketball duties. That decision will come from doctors, LeBron, and LeBron's wife, Savannah. Bronny suffered a cardiac arrest on July 24th during a workout on the USC campus. He was diagnosed with a congenital heart defect. LeBron said Bronny underwent a successful surgery. He gave no timetable on when Bronny will be allowed to practice with the team. USC started practice on September 25th. Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp got the okay to practice this week. Kupp has been out since August to treat a hamstring injury. He's eligible to come off injured reserve this week. If healthy and in shape, Kupp could be in the lineup for Sunday's game against Philadelphia at SoFi. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
At City National, we listen to you.
I want to expand my business and my legacy.
I want to set up the next generation for success.
I want to see my vision come to life.
I want to feel right at home.
Your goals, passions, vision, future. We want to hear it and work alongside you to achieve it. Visit cnb.com to learn more. City National Bank. Here for our clients and communities.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
It's Tavis Smiley in dialogue with Trey Stewart as we talk about homeschooling and why more black families, according to some recent data, are choosing to homeschool their children. Trey Stewart is with Homegrown Homeschools of Texas specifically, and I'm delighted to have her on in this hour as we continue our dialogue right now, again, about why more black folk are choosing to homeschool their precious babies. So the next thing on my list of answers you gave me when I asked you at the top of this conversation about 40 minutes ago, Trey, why black families, you thought I was teasing, right? I told you, this would take me a whole hour. You gave me so many answers, I can go a whole hour with this. I could go longer if I had the time. But the next thing on your list about why more black folk are choosing to homeschool their children is because they're being over-tested. There's no question about the fact that there are too many students now, too many teachers who are teaching to the test, and that's disturbing in a lot of ways. But when you say students are being over-tested, you mean by that what exactly?
I mean, by they're testing them, they're teaching them to test, basically. They're not teaching them life skills and to be able to go out and to build careers and a life and everything. It's just test. To the point where even teachers are stressed out by it because they don't have now the freedom to just teach as they used to, the passion that teachers used to have, because all they're supposed to do now is teach to test. These children in 5th grade are stressed out and dealing with anxiety over tests. And a lot of the information sometimes on these tests are not even things that are going to be relevant to them, in life. But they put so much precedence on it, so much that they're stressing our children out behind these tests.
Yeah. Since you went there, tell me what you have seen, what you witnessed inside the school system versus your children being homeschooled, about their stress levels. Since you mentioned it, let me just probe that for a second here.
Absolutely. I can remember very vividly when my daughter was in the 5th grade and she was needing to take the STAR test, and she was told that, you have to pass the STAR test. You got to study for the STAR test and pass it, because if you don't, you can fail. And she was so stressed out. She wasn't eating. She wasn't sleeping. And to me, I just thought that was so sad to put that much pressure on a child that young over a test. Like I said, that's not going to matter on her college, when she goes to college or whatever. And so it definitely made a huge difference when I brought my children home, because here in Texas, we're not required to do all of those standardized tests. So that eliminated a lot of it. And I think a lot of parents don't even realize that they don't have to take those tests in the school. They can opt out, but that's not, of course, something that they're telling you. So people think that they're forced to have to make their kids be present to take those tests. I just feel like my daughters, they were so much more relaxed when I took that aspect off. If we're not tested, I can test them in a way where they don't even know they're being tested, right? We could just sit up and talk about the information that we've gone over and just see, just very casually, did they retain it? Were they able to comprehend what we talked about? That's me testing them. But sometimes people just don't test well. You can know all the information, have made straight A's all throughout the year, and I sit you now in front of a test and you fail it just because of your nerves.
Yeah, you can't see me, but I got my hand raised. I was never a great test taker.
Right. Neither was I.
Yeah, I've been blessed to do well in my life, but I was not a great test taker. So I always have great empathy for those who are stressed when it comes to taking tests. Let me move from one S word, stress, to the other S word that was on your list, safety. And I hadn't thought about it in this regard, but this is a legitimate issue. We see so much drama and I'm using that as a catch-all word. So much drama in school these days. There's a great debate about why there's so many police in schools these days. Certainly, Black Lives Matter has made it one of their agenda items to do their part to push back against the growing number of police in schools. And you recall, after a couple shootings, now we got teachers in certain states like Ohio who are armed themselves. We're arming teachers in the classroom, which is completely stuck on stupid. I digress on that point. But I didn't see it coming. But I was, again, it got my attention when I asked you the question about why more black folk are choosing to homeschool, and you put on the list safety. So talk to me about that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we don't even have to press too hard on just violence as far as the students fighting each other and, coming to school with weapons and harming each other. But then when you have, of course, what we've been seeing in the media, someone coming from the outside of the school into the school and taking our children out, and people are dropping their kids off at school and trusting that this is the safe space, and that when I pick them up, they're going to be okay. And so many times we've seen that that's not the case, and it's so unfortunate to think now that we need to arm our teachers, or that we need to put specialized walls in the schools that we can start closing in, and the kids have to do drills on if somebody comes in. I mean, this is insane to think that this is what's going on in the schools, that we have to take such measures to ensure that our kids are going to be safe. And oftentimes, even those measures are not working. Yeah.
The next thing on your list, and this one jumped out at me again for a different reason, the safety thing I just hadn't processed in that regard, that keeping your kids at home and homeschooling them doesn't just give you other benefits, but at least your kids are going to be safe when they're in your home. But this next one jumped at me when you said that you referenced the enemy teaching them. We'll get to the whitewashing of history in a moment. We'll get to the belief systems, perhaps of values education curriculum. We'll get to that a little bit later. But when you use the word enemy, I sort of jump. So who is the enemy that you're referring to teaching our children?
Well, the enemy can be anybody who's trying to teach them that they are not worthy.
Okay.
And so anybody who's trying to teach my child that their history doesn't matter, that their feelings don't matter, that their education doesn't matter, that their belief system doesn't matter, that's our enemy. And so if I'm sending my child every day to someone else who does not care for my child, their history, their experiences, that doesn't have a shared feeling behind things with them, that's crazy to me, that to put that much trust in somebody. Yeah. And then think that there's going to be a good product at the end of that. Yeah. Being a child, right? That's going to be raised into a good, safe adult who makes great decisions and different things like that. We're sending our kids every day to people and into a system that is not set up or designed for our children.
Yeah. I would certainly never writ large call, white, and I know you're not saying this either. I just want to be clear about this for those listening who will misquote me if I don't get this right. I would never obviously suggest that white teachers are the enemy of black students. I would never suggest that, number one. And number two, some of my favorite teachers were white people. As a matter of fact, I didn't even see a black teacher until I was a sophomore in college, not high school, in college. Right. I never had a black teacher all of my formative years. I didn't see a black professor until I was a second-year student at Indiana University. That's how long it took me to actually see a black teacher. So my favorite teachers, Mrs. Vera Graff, my second grade teacher, Mr. Jackson in fifth grade, Miss Pappas in fourth grade, and Mr. Beal in my senior year, and Dr. Otis in my sophomore year in high school. All these persons are white persons. They had a profound impact on my life, and I'm grateful for them every single day. That said, it is not lost on me that most black boys in this country, you've got daughters, but most black boys, and for that matter, black girls, are taught every day by white women. And when we come forward, I want to sort of interrogate that. My friend Jawanza Kunjufu in Chicago, where we're heard on WVON 1690 AM, has written books about this. Jawanza has, and I've talked to him about it. But I want to talk to you in this conversation about homegrown homeschooling, about the reality that the frame that we are in. No matter what you think of it, the majority of our kids Black boys and black girls, certainly black boys, are taught by white women. What of it? We'll continue with Trey Stewart when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
At Susan G. Komen, we believe that ending breast cancer needs all of us working together. Because if you've just been diagnosed and don't know where to turn, we've got you. If you can't afford the treatment you need, we've got you. And if you are driven to honor the loved one you've just lost, we have a place for you here. Because of you, we're supporting those who need help today while tirelessly searching for tomorrow's cures. Visit Komen.org and be a part of our Susan G. Komen community today.
Hey, son, how are you feeling?
I'm fine, Pops.
What's on your mind?
I can't explain it. Navigating without a compass, eyes waiting, started to wonder. Metamorphosis, the loss of who you thought you was.
When your kid can't find the language, help them find the lyrics. Listen to the Sound It Out album and get tips and tools to start a conversation at sounditouttogether.org. Brought to you by Ad Council and Pivotal Ventures.
Do you have both Medi-Cal and Medicare?
If so, the new LA Care plan called Medicare Plus can help you get the most out of your health plan for $0.
LA Care provides personalized service to Angelinos like us.
Plus, it gives us access to doctors and specialists across Los Angeles County.
For zero cost, we get access to full benefits.
From vision coverage,
in-home support services,
to prescription drug coverage,
and a quarterly over-the-counter allowance,
plus personal equipment,
meal programs,
a gym membership,
and so much more.
For more than 25 years,
LA Care has provided Angelinos with access to quality health care at an affordable cost.
For our families,
our seniors,
our community,
it's a plus.
It's a plus.
For all of us.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Trey Stewart continuing our conversation now about homegrown homeschooling and why more black families across the nation are choosing to homeschool their children. Trey, as I said a moment ago, I would never, ever say that white folk are the enemy. White teachers are the enemy of black students. But there is something to interrogate here, and that is that most black boys in this country are taught by white women. Again, that's also true for white girls. You understand, for black girls rather. You understand why I'm making that distinction. Of these black boys are being taught by white women. Again, there are a number of African American parents who are choosing for a variety of reasons to homeschool. That being one of them. Any thoughts on that reality or that notion?
Well, I mean, I certainly feel like if someone doesn't have an understanding or a knowledge or a shared experience or even enough empathy and compassion towards a child and their differences from you, and they're not actively seeking to understand it more, that creates a problem. I can't teach you from a place that I can't understand myself. And I saw that so many times where you would have teachers who were so quick to write off a child And oftentimes it's because you just don't understand. You don't want to understand why this child is misbehaving in class, but you don't know that they are living in a situation that is not conducive to getting proper rest and nourishment, an overcrowded home, poverty, racism, different things like that. And so you're just quick to write them off without taking an opportunity to really get to know that child. And I think that that's a disservice to the teacher as well as the student, that more teachers need to be more invested in learning and knowing and being able to sit from a place of empathy and compassion with all of their students.
Yeah. My time is getting tight. Two other things that you gave me on this list that I asked you about 50-some minutes ago, and you see it's taken us the entire hour to interrogate your list. And I stopped you at a certain point where you actually stopped yourself. I could go on and on and on. So if you hadn't stopped, we'd be in the 2 or 3 hours in this conversation.
Right.
When we come forward, I want to conclude our conversation with the two things that we have not gotten to that was on your list of answers to my question of why more black families are choosing to homeschool their black babies, the whitewashing of history, and challenges to a particular family's belief system. We'll get to those two in our remaining moments with Trey Stewart when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family was founded to help address domestic violence and sexual assault in the Asian and the Pacific Islander communities. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family's mission is to build healthy and safe communities by addressing the root causes and consequences of family violence and violence against women. They are committed to meeting the specific cultural and language needs of the Asian and Pacific Islander women and their families. CPAF's vision is of an Asian and Pacific Islander community that embraces healthy relationships and works in partnership with other communities to eradicate all forms of violence. To access services, volunteer, or for more info, visit nurturingchange.org. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe everyone deserves to be safe. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Heart failure, carpal tunnel syndrome, shortness of breath, stomach issues, lower back pain. How does it all add up? If you have heart failure and any of those seemingly unrelated symptoms sound familiar, it's time to talk with your cardiologist and get the full picture. They may add up to transthyretin amyloid cardiomyopathy. ATTR-CM is a rare and underdiagnosed disease. Recognize the signs and discuss them with your doctor soon. Learn more at connectwithyourheart.com. That's connectwithyourheart.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
So one of the other reasons, Trey Stewart, that you said that black families are choosing to homeschool their children is the whitewashing of history. This is a story that everybody's been talking about. You can't run away from it. Ron DeSantis just acting a complete fool in Florida, and others are following his lead when it comes to not teaching the truth, when it comes, as you put it, to whitewashing history. Again, one of the advantages of homeschooling your children is you can give them the history that the school systems across this country increasingly are afraid to teach them or refuse to teach them.
Uncut and in full effect.
Yep, there you go.
Absolutely. I don't think that us removing and whitewashing our history is what's going to heal the nation. I definitely believe that the hard conversations need to happen. This whole notion that us teaching the history is hurting the feelings of other kids or is making people feel bad. Well, we felt bad for over 400 years, and our feelings have been hurt for over 400 years. It's time for a reckoning. We need to be honest in order to heal. So yes, I take it as an ultimate responsibility for myself to teach our children our history in its truth, uncut. Do I teach racism? No, but I do teach my children to know the truth and to be proud of who they are and what we've come from as a resilient people, and to understand what we deserve. We deserve the same rights, the same freedoms. We fought for this country. We built this country, and we deserve to have our side of the story told.
Yep. And finally, on your list, belief systems. I had a conversation not long ago on this program about values education and whether or not we've arrived at a place in this country where in our school systems we ought to consider teaching a values education curriculum. My sense is that because so many kids are not homeschooled and because so many parents are at work all day long while their kids are being schooled wherever they're being schooled, at school or in the streets, we're missing out on our children being indoctrinated with a values education framework. And that's not to say that there, I mean, let me back up. There's certain things that you can't put on that list, but there are some basics, right and wrong, and stealing, and lying, and cheating, and all those sorts of basics that we regard as human values. Those values are not being taught, sadly, to many of our kids today. So there's one conversation to be had, if I had more time, we'd get into that, about values education. But your point was about kids being indoctrinated in ways at school that don't measure up, that don't align with the belief system that you and your husband want them to have. So in the last 2 minutes, say a word about that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a certain level of spirituality that we hold in our home and certain truths that we hold to our hearts biblically that are being taken away from our children, and something else is being forced on them in the system of the public school. Where we used to be able to say certain things, male and female, everything is being changed and things are being pushed on an agenda almost, being pushed on our children. I think that the focus needs to be more on education as far as math, reading, and writing than it needs to be on, if you choose today to be male or female, cat or dog, or spending time on even holidays. I mean, we live in a country that's supposed to be a melting pot where we have all different beliefs and cultures and races of people, but yet there's only one way being taught in the schools, and they're not allowing for the Muslim family or the Jewish family or the Hebrew family or anybody else's viewpoint to be spread across. And our children are being forced to understand only one way. And if it's not that one way, then their way is wrong. And so for me, it's like I want to be able for my children to know how we believe as a family. Right. And then they can learn the other stuff. But the precedence is here and in our biblical truths.
There you have it. At least 10 reasons, at least 10 that we were able to move through in this hour for why more and more African American families, that is, are turning to homeschooling for their children. There is new data out, including data from the Census Bureau, that shows that black folk account for the biggest surge in recent years of those who are choosing to homeschool their children, a domain that was once largely that of white families. Homeschooling used to largely be dominated by white families. No more. Black families are at the front of the race. of making decisions to homeschool their babies. And again, there are 10 reasons why, from Trey Stewart of Homegrown Homeschools of Texas. Trey, thank you for the conversation. I enjoyed it immensely. I appreciate your time. All the best to you and your family.
Thank you so much. It was my honor and my pleasure.
Pleasure was all mine. That's our show for today. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until then, thanks for tuning in. As always, keep the faith.
Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Tens of thousands of healthcare workers are poised